I still remember the quiet of that morning. The light was soft, the air was cool, and for a moment my home felt peaceful. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a cup of warm tea, listening to the slow ticking of the old wall clock. It was the same clock that had been ticking through every chapter of my life. Through struggles, through love, through the years when my children filled this house with noise and footsteps and laughter. Now it ticks in silence. That morning I whispered something to myself. A question I had been avoiding for years. Where did I go wrong? My voice cracked a little when I said it, not because I wanted pity, not because I blamed myself, but because I knew the answer was not simple. Life is not simple. Sometimes tears stop because the heart grows tired of breaking. As I sat there, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped before my mind could think. But it wasn't a call, just a notification from a shopping app. I stared at the screen for a moment and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. That was when I said the words that opened this chapter of my life. I want to forgive them, but I don't know how. Forgiveness is not a door you open. It is a road you walk. And I was still standing at the beginning of that road. My children had hurt me. Maybe unintentionally, maybe without realizing it. Maybe because life had taken them in different directions. But the truth was simple. They were not here. They were not calling. They were not asking if I was eating well, or sleeping well, or even surviving the way I once cared about their survival. Yet somewhere deep inside me a small voice whispered, "You are still their mother. And mothers do not stop loving. But you must learn how to forgive." And that was the beginning of the journey I'm about to share. A journey of memory, a journey of hurt, a journey of quiet strength, a journey of forgiveness. A journey that began with a cold cup of tea and a heart that refused to stop loving. I want to take you back many years, to a time when my home was full, when every room had a voice, when every corner was alive with energy. Sometimes to understand the silence of today, you have to remember the noise of yesterday. When my children were young, life was not perfect, but it was warm. We didn't have much money, we didn't live in a big house, but we had love, simple, everyday love. The kind you feel when a child leans against your arm without thinking, or when they call out "Mama" the moment something scares them. I used to wake up early, long before the sun. I made breakfast quietly, trying not to wake anyone. The smell of warm chapatis or eggs or simple porridge, it always filled the home before the morning light did. That kitchen, that tiny kitchen, was my world. It was where I cooked, where I cried sometimes, where I found strength. My eldest son, Adil, was always the quiet one. He didn't talk much, but he noticed everything. If I looked tired, he would whisper, "Mama, I will help today." Even as a child, he carried a seriousness in his eyes. He wanted to grow up fast. He wanted to take care of everyone. Then came my middle son, Samir. Oh, he was all noise, all laughter, all trouble, all questions. If Adil was the calm river, Samir was the wild storm. But he brought joy. He made the house brighter. There were days when I would be cooking and suddenly feel two small arms wrap around my waist. He would bury his face into my back and say, "Mama, don't work, sit with me." And I would laugh even when I was tired. And then, my youngest, my daughter Hania, my soft, gentle, sweet girl, she was the light of my life. She followed me everywhere, into the kitchen, into the garden, even when I hung clothes outside. She talked endlessly, asked everything, and always slipped her hand into mine without asking. Those years, those simple, messy, beautiful years, shaped my heart. People think mothers become mothers when they give birth, but no. We become mothers the first time a child reaches out to us, and we realize we would do anything for them. My husband worked long hours. He was a good man, but he lived in his own world, quiet, distant at times, but he provided, and in his own way, he cared. The children spent more time with me, though. If they fell, they ran to me. If they were hungry, they came to me. If they fought with each other, they cried into my lap. I became their place of comfort, the soft ground where they landed. There were nights when I stayed awake long after everyone slept. I would sit at the edge of the bed and think, these children, they are my purpose. Maybe every mother thinks that at some point. Maybe that is why the hurt feels so deep when things change. But back then, nothing had changed. We were still together. Every evening we ate at the table as a family. Simple meals, simple conversations. Adil talked about school. Samir argued about everything just to be funny. Hania always had a new story or a new drawing to show. I remember the sound of their spoons against the plates, the way Hania would swing her legs under the table, the way Samir would steal food from Adil's plate and run, the way Adil would sigh but still smile because he loved his little brother. Sometimes, when I close my eyes even now, I can hear those sounds again, sounds you never realize are precious until they disappear. As they grew older, things began to shift, slowly, naturally. Children don't stay little forever. They start building their own worlds, their own dreams, their own secrets. Adil grew quieter. He started spending more time studying, preparing for the future. Samir grew louder, more playful, more social. He had friends everywhere, down the street, at school, outside our house. And Hania became thoughtful. She started writing things down, keeping diaries, humming songs she heard on TV. But even as they grew, they came back home. They came back to me. The house still felt full. I thought it would always be like that. But life has a way of teaching you that nothing stays the same. Even love changes shape. Even closeness fades if we don't protect it. When the boys reached college, they moved to different cities. I remember hugging Adil at the bus station. His eyes were wet, though he tried to hide it. "Mama," he said softly, "I will call you every day." I believed him because in that moment he believed it too. Samir left a year later. He hugged me quickly, not wanting to show emotion, but as he walked away, he turned back twice, then 3 times, just to see if I was still looking. And my daughter remained with me a little longer. She didn't want to leave. She promised she never would. I held her hand and smiled, thinking, at least one of my children will stay close. But life has a different plan for all of us. Slowly their calls became shorter, their visits became fewer, their voices changed, the warmth faded just a little each year. I told myself, this is normal, children grow up, but my heart felt something else. One evening, long before everything fell apart, I sat in the same living room where I sit alone now. The room was quiet, the lights were off except for one lamp. I held a blanket around my shoulders because the night was cold, and I whispered, I hope they never forget this home. I hope they never forget me. But fate had already begun its work. Distance had already started forming, and the day would come, a day I didn't expect, when I would realize that even the children you love with your entire soul can forget the very hands that raised them. But back then, I didn't know. I held on to hope. I held on to memories, because mothers, we always believe the best in our children, even when the world shows us the worst. The first signs of distance are always small. So small that a mother convinces herself she is imagining things. But looking back, I can see every moment where the cracks began to form. The boys were in college, my daughter was still with me, finishing school. Life felt different, but manageable. I missed my sons deeply, but I told myself this was good for them. They were chasing a future. They were becoming men. In the beginning, they called often. Every few days I would hear my phone ring. Adil's voice was calm, steady. "Mama, have you eaten? Are you resting? Everything okay at home?" I always felt warmed by his concern. Samir's calls were shorter. He talked fast, laughed loudly, told me funny stories about his friends. "Don't worry, Mama, I am doing great," he would say before hanging up. But slowly, those calls changed. Adil became busy. His calls shifted from every few days to once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then "Mama, I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" But tomorrow rarely came. Samir's calls were even quicker. Sometimes he just sent a text. Sometimes he didn't answer at all. If I called him, he would say, "Mama, I'm in class," or "Mama, I'm with friends," or "I'll call you later," and later never came. At first I blamed their schedules. I told myself, they are young, they are busy, they will call when they can. But a mother feels when something is changing, not with the mind, but with the heart. One evening I made their favorite dinner. Chicken pulao, raita, and warm roti. The house smelled like old times. I sat at the table imagining them walking in, laughing, arguing, fighting over the bigger piece of chicken like they always did, but I sat alone. The food grew cold, and I realized they were drifting away. I tried not to show my daughter how lonely I felt. She was gentle, but she was young. I didn't want to burden her, but she noticed anyway. One night she stood in the doorway of my room, holding her diary against her chest. She looked small, worried. "Mama," she whispered, "are you sad?" I smiled. "No, my love, just tired." She didn't believe me. She walked in, sat beside me, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mama," she said softly, "when I grow up I will never leave you alone." Her voice was full of innocence, full of promises. I nodded and kissed her forehead even though my heart whispered something else. Life will change her too. And it did. When Hania turned 18, she fell in love. I didn't stop her. Young hearts always run fast. She glowed when she spoke about him. Her eyes sparkled. She talked about a future that didn't include me as much as it used to. At first it didn't hurt. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to build her own life. But slowly, she stopped sitting with me in the evenings. She stopped following me around the house. She stopped slipping her hand into mine. One day, she came home late. I waited for her, worrying like always. When she walked in, she smiled, but it was a smile meant for someone else, not me. I asked gently, "Hania, where were you?" She said, "Mama, don't worry so much. I am grown up now." Her words were not cruel, but they carried a truth I didn't want to hear. She was growing away from me too, not in anger, not in conflict, just in life. But the real conflict started months later, when the boys finished college and started working. Adil became distant, unreachable. He lived in the same city but never visited. He texted sometimes, but short messages, emotionless messages. I would send long replies, asking about his health, his meals, his days. His answers were simple: "I'm fine, busy, talk later." Later never happened. Samir changed too. He became proud, sometimes sharp in his tone. When I called, he often sounded annoyed. Once I said, "Beta, I miss hearing your voice." He laughed lightly and said, "Mama, you're being dramatic. I'm busy. I'll talk later." That later grew into weeks, then months. I tried to hide my hurt, but hurt is like water. It seeps into every corner of your heart. Then came the moment that broke something inside me. It was a rainy afternoon. The house felt cold. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and sat near the window, waiting for someone, anyone, to remember me. My phone buzzed. For a moment, hope bloomed inside me. It was Adil. I smiled, my heart lifting. He wrote, "Mama, I won't be coming home for Eid this year. I have plans. Plans that didn't include me." I stared at the message for a long time. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I wrote only, "Okay, Beta, take care." But inside, I broke. Eid had always been our family day. The day we cooked together, the day we laughed, prayed, ate as one, and now I would sit alone. A few days later, Samir sent me a message too. "Mama, I'm traveling with friends next month, won't be able to visit." Just like that, no warmth, no hesitation, no guilt. I felt a deep ache in my chest, not anger, not disappointment, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that sits with you in the kitchen when you're cooking for no one, the kind that sleeps beside you when the night gets too quiet, the kind that reminds you that the people you raised, the people you sacrificed for, the people you loved with your entire soul, are living lives that no longer include you. But the real turning point, the moment that pushed everything forward, didn't come from the boys. It came from my daughter, Hania, the one who once promised never to leave me, the one who would soon say something that would wound me deeper than anything my sons had ever done. And that moment changed everything. Life has a way of whispering warnings before it shouts the truth, and with my daughter, the warnings were there, soft, quiet, easy to ignore. But a mother sees even what she tries not to see. Hania had fallen deeply in love. The boy was kind enough, polite when he visited, but I could sense that his world was very different from ours. He came from a comfortable family. He had dreams that stretched far beyond our small home, and Hania, in her innocence, wanted to follow him wherever he went. I didn't stop her. How could I? Every parent wants their child to have a better life than they did. But slowly, her tone changed, her behavior changed, her routines changed. The girl who once sat beside me every evening now spent hours on the phone. She cooked less, she talked less, she listened less. Sometimes she seemed to rush through conversations with me as if I was a task she needed to finish. I told myself, this is normal. She is young. She is in love. But the truth settled heavily in my heart. She was slipping away too. One afternoon she came into the kitchen while I was preparing tea. She leaned against the doorway, her face calm but distant. "Mama," she said, "I need to talk to you." Her tone made me stop stirring. There was something final in it. I turned to her. "Yes, Beta, what happened?" She took a slow breath and spoke quietly. "Mama, I want to move out." The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered into the pot. I felt the sound in my chest. "Move out?" I repeated, barely trusting my voice. She looked uncomfortable but firm. "I love him, Mama, and we want to live together. I can't stay here anymore." For a moment the room blurred. The air felt heavy. I held onto the counter to steady myself. "Hania," I whispered, "can we talk about this? You are still so young." She shook her head gently. "I have already decided." Her words felt like a knife, not because she wanted to start her life, but because she had made a life decision, without me. Without even asking my thoughts, without considering my feelings, I had always been her safe place. Now I felt like a wall she had outgrown. I nodded slowly, trying to smile even though my lips trembled. "If this is what you want, Beta, I won't stop you." She didn't see the tears gathering in my eyes, or maybe she chose not to. A week later, she packed her things, not all at once, little by little, as if trying to make the goodbye easier, but every item she carried out of her room felt like a piece of my heart leaving with it. The morning she left, the sky was gray. The same gray from the day everything would soon fall apart. She hugged me, but it was a short hug, a busy hug. "I'll visit often, Mama," she said. I nodded. I didn't want to make her feel guilty, but as her footsteps faded down the hallway, as the door closed behind her, as silence returned to the house, I realized something. A mother's heart can feel full and empty at the same time. For days after she left, I wandered around the house. Her room felt unfamiliar without her clothes, her books, her scent. I kept her old scarf on her pillow. Sometimes I would sit on the edge of her bed and touch it, just to feel close to her. I waited for her calls. At first she called every day, then every other day, then once a week, then, sometimes only when she needed something. One evening, weeks after she moved out, she called unexpectedly. Her voice was hurried. "Mama, can you send me some of my documents? I need them for something." "Yes, Beta," I said softly. "When will you come visit?" There was a long pause. "Mama, I am busy. We will see later." That later felt like a familiar wound, like the same later her brothers had used. Still, I tried to sound hopeful. "Okay, I will wait." But she didn't come. Not that day, not that week, not that month. The house grew quieter again, and even though I still cooked for myself, the food no longer had flavor. No spices could fill the emptiness where my children's laughter once lived. Then one evening, while I was sweeping the living room, my phone rang. It was Hanya. Relief washed through me. "Hello, Beta, how are you?" She hesitated before speaking. Then she said words I never expected to hear from my own child. "Mama, he and I have been thinking, maybe you should not come over so often." I froze. The broom slipped slightly from my hand. "Not come," I whispered. "Yes," she said softly but firmly. "It makes things complicated. We need space. We need privacy. You can come sometimes, but not too much." Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp, as if I was a burden, as if I was someone they needed to keep at a distance, as if my presence was a problem. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. "Beta, I only come to see you. I miss you." She sighed. Her sigh was the worst part. It sounded like my love was an inconvenience. "I know, Mama, but please understand, we are trying to build our life. We need some time without interruptions." Interruptions. She had called me an interruption. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to cry while she could hear it. "Okay," I whispered. "I will not come unless you call me." There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "Thank you, Mama," and ended the call just like that. I stood in the center of the room holding the broom, tears falling slowly onto the floor. It was not anger, it was not shock, it was not betrayal, it was something deeper, a realization. My children were releasing me from their lives, not with fights, not with cruelty, but with distance, with coldness, with the absence of need. A mother doesn't stop loving, but sometimes children stop needing love, or worse, they start seeing love as a burden. That night I sat alone near the window. The sky outside was dark, but inside me it felt even darker, and the truth I had been avoiding came quietly into my heart. My children have forgotten me, and I must learn how to survive being forgotten. After that call with my daughter, something changed inside the house, and inside me, it was not a loud change, not something you hear or see. It was a quiet shift, like when a warm room suddenly feels cold, even though nothing has moved. I kept living, of course. Mothers always keep living, even with broken hearts. I cooked small meals, I cleaned the house, I folded the clothes, I watered the plants outside. But everything felt different. Every corner of the house reminded me of someone who wasn't there. Every sound, or the lack of sound, reminded me of a time when life was louder, brighter, warmer. Sometimes when I stirred tea in the mornings, I heard echoes of old laughter, Samir arguing with Adil, Hania humming her songs, Adil saying, "Mama, you made too much food again." But those were just memories, shadows of the past, nothing more. The present was quiet, too quiet. The day everything felt too heavy. One day I went to the market alone. I used to enjoy small walks, but that day the walk felt long, not because of distance, but because of the weight on my heart. I passed by a mother holding her little boy's hand. The boy kept tugging her arm, pointing at candies, laughing loudly. And the mother, tired but smiling, bought him a small sweet. I stood there watching, and something inside me melted, then cracked. I looked away quickly, afraid I might cry in front of strangers. I walked faster, finished my errands, and returned home. But entering the house that day felt different, heavier, like the walls were closing in, like the silence had grown thicker. I placed the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and suddenly felt weak, not physically, emotionally. I leaned on the sink and whispered, "I miss them so much." My voice trembled. It startled me because I had not heard my own voice break in a long time, a call I didn't expect. That evening, out of nowhere, Samir called, not to ask how I was, not to say he missed me, but he said something that made my heart sink even deeper. "Mama, can you send me 10,000? I need it urgently." No greeting, no warmth, just a request. I took a breath. "Beta, I will see what I can manage." He didn't ask if I had the money. He didn't ask if it would affect me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He only said, "Please send soon," and hung up. I sat on the bed holding the phone in my hand, staring at the screen long after the call ended, not because I couldn't arrange the money, not because I didn't want to help, but because mothers give even when their hearts are tired, even when their children no longer see their sacrifices, even when their needs are invisible. I sent the money the next day. He didn't call to say thank you, not even a message, a deal's distance. A deal had changed too. He had always been quiet, but now his silence felt different. It wasn't peaceful anymore, it was cold. One evening I gathered the courage to call him. He answered, his voice rushed. "Mama, I'm in the middle of something, make it quick." I held my breath. "I just wanted to hear your voice, Beta." There was a short pause, small but sharp. Then he said, "Okay, is everything fine?" "Yes," I whispered. "I only wanted to talk." "All right," he said. "I'll call you later." But he didn't. Days passed, weeks passed, not a single call, the breaking point. The moment everything truly changed, the moment that still sits heavy in my memory, came a few months later. It was Hania again. She had been distant, but I still held on to the hope that she loved me, that she needed me, that I had a place in her new life. She called late one evening. "Mama, can you come over tomorrow?" My heart lifted. I smiled without meaning to. "Yes, of course, Beta." I prepared small things to take for her, some homemade snacks, a scarf she had forgotten, a small plant she once loved. The next day I dressed carefully. I wanted to look nice, not burdening. A mother always tries to be easy on her children. I reached her place. She opened the door slowly. Her face didn't light up. Her voice wasn't warm. There was something nervous in her eyes. "Mama, come inside," she said quietly. I stepped in, holding the bags. Her husband wasn't there. The house felt unfamiliar, too neat, too quiet. She sat down and gestured for me to sit. There was a long silence. Then she said words that broke something in me that has never fully healed. "Mama, he thinks you come too often. He says it makes the house feel uncomfortable." I blinked, confused. "I hardly come, Beta." My heart pounded. I felt dizzy. "Beta," I whispered, "I never wanted to bother anyone." She looked down. "He says, maybe you should call before coming, and maybe you should come less. Maybe you should come less." Those words felt like the sharpest cut I had ever felt from any of my children. I nodded slowly, quietly, even though something inside me was crying loudly. "It's okay," I said. "You don't have to explain." But she still did. "I'm just trying to keep peace in my home, Mama. Please understand." I wanted to tell her that I was her home once, that my arms were her peace, that my love had shaped her whole world, but I stayed silent. A mother's pain is often silent. I stood up, placed the snacks on her table, and gave her a gentle smile. Not a happy smile, a brave one. "I will not come unless you ask me," I said softly. She nodded. I left her house without turning back. When I reached outside, the sky had begun to drizzle. Just like the day I whispered, "Where did I go wrong?" The rain hid my tears as I walked back home, and for the first time in my life, I felt like the mother I had been for so many years was slowly disappearing from their world. The days after that visit to my daughter's home were some of the heaviest days of my life. Not because anyone shouted at me, not because there was a fight, not because of anger, but because of the quietness. It was the quietness that hurt the most, a quietness that said, "You are no longer needed. You are no longer wanted. You are no longer part of our world." And yet, as mothers do, I tried to pretend I was fine. I told myself, "She is building her life. Children forget. It is normal." but knowing something is normal does not make it less painful. The house that grew too big. My house felt enormous after that. The same house that once felt too small for the noise of 3 children now felt too big, too empty, too echoing with memories. I would stand in the hallway and stare at the 3-bedroom doors. Adil's room, Samir's room, Hania's room. Each door carried a story. Adil used to stick school badges on his door. Samir once drew a cartoon on his wall and got scolded, then hugged because he cried too much afterward. Hania used to hang her little flower necklaces on the door handle. Now, their doors were closed, not physically but emotionally, closed to me. I walked into each room sometimes, not to cry, though tears always came, but to feel something. To remind myself that I had once been needed, I would straighten their old books, fix their curtains, sit on their beds and whisper, "Where did my children go? Where did we lose each other?" No one answered. The unanswered messages. I still sent messages. Mothers don't stop trying. "Beta, how are you? Did you eat? I was thinking of you today. Take care." But those words cut deep. I ended the call soon after and sat silently on the sofa. The room felt colder. My hands trembled slightly, not because they went out, but because they never thought I might want to be there too, the moment I realized they didn't see me anymore. One morning, I woke up early, like I always do. I made tea, but didn't drink it. I stood by the window, watching people pass by, mothers walking their children to school, young people going to work, and a thought came to me. A thought so heavy, so painful, I felt my breath stop for a second. My children don't see me anymore. Not really, not the way they once did. To them, I was someone in the background, someone they checked on occasionally, someone who existed, but didn't matter in their daily lives. I felt a tear fall onto my hand, then another. I wasn't crying because they were busy. I wasn't crying because life had changed. I wasn't crying because they had grown up. I was crying because they had forgotten the woman who raised them, truly forgotten. Even the strongest hearts have breaking points. When I finally fell sick. It was around this time that I fell ill. Not badly at first, just a fever, a small weakness. But because I lived alone, small illnesses feel bigger. I lay in bed, shivering slightly, thinking, should I tell them? But then I remembered everything Hania had said, Samir ignoring me, Adil acting distant, and I whispered to myself, no, I don't want to bother them. 2 days passed, my fever got worse, I didn't have the energy to cook, I barely drank water. I stayed under the blanket, drifting in and out of sleep. The phone did not ring, not once. On the 3rd day, I finally gathered the strength to send a small message. I am a little sick, nothing serious. It was morning. By evening, not one of them replied. I checked my phone again and again, nothing. I whispered to myself, maybe they are busy. But inside, the truth hurt. They were not busy, they were elsewhere, just not here, just not with me. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, not because of the fever, not because of the loneliness, but because I realized something no mother ever wants to admit. They don't even know how much I need them, and maybe they don't care to know. The unexpected visitor. On the 4th day of my fever, someone knocked on my door. A soft knock, gentle. My heart jumped, not in hope, but in fear, because it wasn't the knock of someone familiar. It wasn't the knock of my children. It was my neighbor, an older woman who lived 2 houses down. She said she hadn't seen me outside in days and got worried. She brought soup. She sat with me. She talked softly. She checked my temperature. She placed a cool cloth on my forehead. I wanted to thank her, but the words stuck in my throat because all I could think was, this woman who is not my blood cares more than my own children. She stayed with me until I fell asleep. And when I woke up, my pillow was wet with tears I didn't remember crying, the realization that changed me. After I recovered slowly, quietly, gently, something inside me changed. I didn't stop loving my children, never, but I stopped expecting them to love me the way they once did. Expectations break hearts. Acceptance protects them. I looked in the mirror one morning and whispered, I raise them with love. I raise them with sacrifice, but I cannot force them to see me. I cannot force them to care. And in that moment, I felt both weak and strong, hurt and healed, broken and whole. I knew something had to change, and that change would begin with the moment everything finally collapsed, the moment that would push me toward forgiveness, but only after breaking me completely. That moment was coming soon. There comes a moment in every mother's life when the pain she has been quietly holding finally becomes too heavy. For me, that moment arrived on a day that began as simply as any other. The morning was calm. The sky was pale, the kind of light gray that carries no promise, neither sunshine nor rain. I woke up, made tea, and sat in the kitchen, but the tea tasted bitter. Not because I added less sugar, but because my heart felt tired. I looked at my phone, no messages, no missed calls, no little signs that someone somewhere was thinking of me. I placed the phone face down and whispered to myself, "It's okay, maybe today will be better." But it wasn't. The phone call that broke me. Around noon my phone finally rang, my heart jumped, a natural reaction, the hope of a mother who has waited too long. But the moment I saw the caller ID, my hope wilted. It was not Adil, not Samir, not Hania. It was Samir's wife. She only called when something was needed. I answered softly, "Assalamu alaikum, beta." Her voice was flat, no warmth, no politeness beyond necessity. "Wa alaikum salam, auntie. Samir wanted to remind you about the money." I froze. "Money?" "Yes, he said he asked you a few weeks ago. He's waiting." I took a slow breath. "I already sent it," I said gently. There was a pause. "Oh," she said. "Okay, I'll tell him." No thank you, no kindness, just a task completed. Before I could ask how she was doing, she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling a deep ache spread through my chest. Children grow up. Children forget. But when even their spouses treat you like an ATM, something inside you crumbles. Adil's final distance. Later that week I tried calling Adil. He didn't answer. I tried again the next day. Still nothing. On the third day he sent a message. "Mama, I am very busy. Stop calling me during work hours. Stop calling me. Not, can we talk later? Not, I'm busy today. Not, I miss you, Mama." Just a command, a boundary, a wall. I read the message twice, then again. My hands trembled. My eyes stung. I typed a reply. "I'm sorry, Beta. I won't bother you." And I put the phone down slowly, like it was something fragile. But the truth was, the fragile thing was me. My daughter's words that shattered the last piece of me. If the boys had built a wall, Hania, my sweet girl, was the one who placed the final stone. She called one evening. Her voice was unusually cold. "Mama, I want to talk to you about something important." I swallowed. "Yes, Beta?" "It's about your behavior." I froze. "My behavior?" "Yes," she said. "You get emotional too easily. You ask too many questions. He says it makes things uncomfortable." I felt something sharp in my chest. She continued, "I want you to understand that I have a life now. You can't expect me to call every day. And when you come to my house, don't comment on things. Don't look sad. Don't make him feel pressured." Her words blurred in my ears. "Don't look sad. Don't expect calls. Don't comment. Don't feel too much." I whispered, "Beta, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong." She sighed, a heavy sigh. A sigh I had never heard from her before. "Mama, just try to be less emotional. And please give us space." Space, that word again, space from me, from the mother who carried her, fed her, held her through every fear, every failure. "Okay," I whispered, "I will change." But inside, I felt something collapse. The day I broke completely. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday, a quiet afternoon. I was sweeping the living room when my phone lit up with a message in the family group chat. A picture, all 3 of my children, together, smiling, standing in a restaurant. Adil, Samir, Hania, my 3 babies, laughing, celebrating something, without telling me, without inviting me, without even mentioning they were meeting. My breath caught, my fingers went cold. The broom slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. I stared at the picture until my vision blurred. All 3 of them, together, having fun, without me. My heart whispered the bitter truth. They remember each other, but not me. I sat on the sofa, holding the phone to my chest, my whole body shaking. A few minutes later, I received a voice note from Hania. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Her voice was cheerful, happy. "Mama, look, we all met today. You always said you wanted us to stay close. See, we are close. Okay, I'll talk later." The message ended. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I wanted to join. She didn't ask if I was alone. She sent the message as if she was showing me something beautiful, not realizing she had shown me my deepest wound. I put the phone down, and for the first time in many years, I cried loudly, not soft tears, not quiet sadness, a deep, aching cry that came from every corner of my soul. I cried until my throat hurt, until I couldn't breathe, until I felt empty, empty of expectations, empty of hope, empty of the illusion that my children still saw me. That day, in that living room, with that picture glowing on my phone screen, I realized I had lost them, not because I failed, not because I was unloving, not because I did something wrong, but because life had changed them, and I had been left behind. A mother's greatest heartbreak is not when her children fight her, it's when they forget her, and that day, my children had forgotten me completely, the turning of my heart. After the tears stopped, I sat quietly. My chest hurt, my eyes burned, my head ached, but something strange happened. Inside that pain, something shifted, a calmness, a numbness, a softness that felt like surrender. I whispered, "I cannot keep breaking like this," and for the first time I allowed myself to say something I had avoided for years. I need to protect my heart, not from strangers, not from the world, but from my own children. That was the turning point, the moment everything inside me changed. The moment the journey toward forgiveness began, not from strength but from heartbreak. After that day, the day I saw the picture of my 3 children together without me, something inside me finally settled, not in anger, not in revenge, not in bitterness, it settled in acceptance. For years I had been holding on to the memory of who they used to be. The warm children, the noisy house, the laughter that filled every corner of my life. But that picture, that moment, was like life putting its hand on my shoulder and whispering, "They are gone from your world, and you must learn how to live in yours." I didn't stop loving them. I could never stop. But I stopped expecting, and in that quiet acceptance, a strange kind of peace began to grow, learning to live with loneliness. The next few weeks passed slowly. I cooked smaller meals. I cleaned the house in silence. I walked to the market without rushing. I drank my tea alone, but I felt lighter. Not happy, no, just lighter. I was no longer waiting for phone calls, no longer staring at the door expecting a knock, no longer checking the family chat hoping for a message. I had stopped hoping, and because of that the pain eased. Loneliness didn't disappear, but it hurt less. It became something I could hold without breaking. Every morning I sat by the window and watched life move outside, children laughing, mothers hurrying, old men chatting on the street corner, and I told myself something simple. I still exist. Even if they forget me, I still exist. The visit from my daughter. One afternoon, about a month later, my daughter came to visit, unexpectedly, without calling ahead. She knocked softly. I opened the door and saw her standing there, holding her bag, looking a little unsure. "Mama," she said, "I was nearby." I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the sofa. She looked around the house quietly as if searching for something familiar, maybe memories, maybe guilt. "Do you want tea?" I asked gently. She nodded. I made tea the way she always liked, light, sweet, warm. When I placed the cup in front of her, she held it but didn't drink. She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "Mama, are you okay?" I smiled, a small calm smile. "Yes, Beta, I am fine." She looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes," I said again. "I am okay." She stared at me for a long moment, and something flickered in her eyes. A confusion, a realization, maybe even worry. She expected me to cling, to complain, to ask her why she hadn't visited, but I didn't. I just sat there peacefully. She finally asked, "Mama, did we hurt you?" My hands paused. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to blame either, so I said quietly, "Sometimes love hurts, Beta, even when no one means to hurt." She lowered her gaze. I continued, "But I am not angry. I am learning to accept things as they are." Her eyes softened, her shoulders loosened. "Mama, I don't want you to feel alone," she said softly. I smiled gently. "You didn't make me alone, Beta. Life made me alone, and I am learning to live with it." She swallowed hard, blinking away the shine in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she looked like my little girl again. The one who used to hold my hand tightly, but she didn't reach out this time, and I didn't expect her to. When she left, she hugged me, a real hug, warm, tight. "Mama, I will visit more," she whispered, and I said, "Come whenever your heart wants to, Beta, not out of pressure." She nodded. I closed the door behind her and whispered a small prayer for her happiness, not for her return, not for her attention, just her happiness, because that is what motherhood becomes in its final form, loving without needing anything back. The day my neighbor spoke the truth. One evening, my neighbor, the same woman who brought me soup when I was sick, came to visit. We sat together in the living room, sipping tea. She looked at me thoughtfully and asked, "You seem calmer these days. What changed?" I smiled softly. I stopped expecting love the way I used to receive it. She nodded slowly. "That is wisdom that comes with pain," she said. I looked down at my tea. "Yes," I whispered, "but peace." Peace comes after accepting that pain. She placed her hand on mine gently. You are a strong woman, but remember, strength does not mean staying silent, it means forgiving without losing yourself. Her words stayed with me long after she left, forgiving without losing myself. Could I really do that? I didn't know yet, but the seeds were planted, the unexpected silence from my sons. In the next few weeks, the boys hardly reached out. Adil sent a few short texts. Samir asked for something once and then disappeared. But this time, their silence didn't crush me. It simply existed, I replied politely, softly, without expectations, because expectations had become the chains that held my heart in pain. Slowly, I was freeing myself from them, the day they finally noticed. Then came a day that surprised me, a small moment but meaningful. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the garden trimming the dry leaves of my plants when my phone rang. Hania, she sounded hesitant. Mama, what are you doing? Just watering the plants, I said softly. Oh, she paused. You didn't message me today. I smiled at the sky. No, Beta, I didn't. Why? She asked, sounding almost unsure. I thought before answering. Because I want you to live your life freely, I said, and I want to live mine too. We will meet when God writes it, not when pressure writes it. She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, Mama, I miss you. I closed my eyes, letting that warmth settle into my heart. I miss you too, Beta. It was a small step. A tiny crack in the wall. But it was something. A new peace growing in me. In the days that followed, something shifted in my heart. Not a sudden miracle. Not a complete healing, just a softening. I began to cook with a lighter heart. I began to sleep better. I began to smile at small things again. The birds on the window, the neighbor children playing outside, the warmth of sunlight on the floor. My heart was still bruised, but it had stopped bleeding. Forgiveness was not complete, not yet, but it had begun. It had begun the moment I stopped expecting love and started offering peace instead. And that peace, that new, quiet peace, was leading me towards something I never thought I would feel again. Strength, a gentle strength, a mother's strength, the strength to forgive, and very soon a moment was coming that would test that forgiveness. In the most unexpected way, healing never arrives loudly, it comes quietly. The way morning light enters a dark room, soft and gentle, and in my life healing began in the form of small moments, moments I didn't expect, moments that seemed simple, but carried the weight of big changes. It started with a message from Adil, a short message, but meaningful. Mama, are you okay? Haven't heard from you. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because the message was emotional, it wasn't, but because it was the first time in a long time that he reached out. Without needing something, I replied calmly. Yes, Beta, I am okay, thank you for asking. He didn't answer immediately, but later that night he sent another message. I might come visit this weekend. Not a promise, not a plan, just a possibility. But even that small sentence made my heart soften, not with excitement, not with expectations, just with a gentle hope that maybe, slowly, my children were beginning to see me again. Samir's unexpected call. 2 days later, Samir called. His voice was not loud and confident like usual. It felt unsure. Mama, I need to talk to you. My heart tightened. What happened, Beta? There was a long pause. Finally, he said, Mama, I saw the picture we posted, the one of us together. I realized we didn't even think to invite you. I didn't speak. I didn't want my voice to shake, he continued. And then I thought about everything you've been doing alone, and I felt guilty. The last word came out softly, almost like it hurt him to say it. I closed my eyes. For a moment the silence between us felt real and honest, not distant, not cold. Samir, I said gently, I don't want you to feel guilty. I just want you to live with a kind heart. He exhaled. Mama, I'm sorry. We didn't treat you right. I didn't treat you right. Hearing that didn't magically heal me, but it reached a part of me that had been ignored for too long, I said softly. Thank you for saying that, Beta, he whispered. I will come visit soon. I smiled, not expecting, just accepting. Whenever your heart wants to, Beta. Adil finally walks through the door. That weekend, Adil actually came. I didn't prepare a feast. I didn't decorate the house. I didn't spend hours cooking like I used to. I simply cleaned the living room and made his favorite tea. When he arrived, he stood at the door awkwardly, like a guest, not like a son coming home. Mama, he said quietly. I stepped aside. Come in, Beta. He walked in slowly, looking around the house. I wondered what he saw, the silence, the empty rooms, the mother who had stopped, waiting. He sat on the sofa. I placed the tea in front of him. He held the cup with both hands, as if absorbing warmth from it. After a long silence, he finally said, "Mama, you've changed." I smiled softly. "Life changes everyone, Beta." He swallowed. His voice was low. I didn't realize how distant I became. I didn't reply. I wanted him to speak his own truth. He continued, "I kept thinking you would always be here, that I could call any time. I didn't notice how much I was hurting you." My throat tightened. I placed my hand on his, not the way I used to, not with desperation or longing, but gently, like a mother who had learned to let go. "Adil, I love you. I never wanted anything but your happiness." His eyes softened. He nodded, and for the first time in years I saw the boy he used to be, the one who held my hand at the bus station, promising to call every day, Hania's moment of truth. My daughter had already visited once. She had seen the calm in me, but she didn't understand it, not yet. One evening she called again, "Mama, can I come over?" "Of course, Beta." When she arrived, she hugged me tightly. She held me longer than she ever had. In the last few years, when we sat down, she looked at me with teary eyes. "Mama, why are you so calm now? Earlier you used to message so much. You used to ask about us. Now you barely say anything." I smiled gently, not coldly, not sadly, just peacefully. "Hania, I realized something." "What?" she asked, her voice soft. "I realized that love is not something we can demand. We can only give it, and let it return in its own time." Her eyes filled. She looked down at her hands. "Mama, I was so rude to you. I let him influence me. I stopped thinking for myself." I touched her cheek gently. "You were building your life, Beta. Sometimes we lose our way while growing, but that doesn't mean we stop loving." She looked up, tears falling. "Mama, did I hurt you?" "Yes," I whispered honestly, "but I forgive you." She burst into tears. She leaned forward and buried her face in my lap, the way she used to when she was little. I placed my hand on her head, softly, slowly, lovingly. In that moment, the years of distance melted, not completely, not magically, but enough for healing to begin. The three of them, together again. A few days later, all three of them came together, not because I asked, not because they needed anything. They came because they wanted to. For the first time in years, my living room was full again, Samir talking loudly, Adil shaking his head at him, Hania laughing softly, and me, sitting quietly, watching them. At one point, Hania turned to the boys and said, "We didn't treat Mama well, we forgot her." The boys looked down. There was a long silence. Then Adil said softly, "We will do better from now on." And Samir added, "We promise." I didn't answer. I just smiled. Promises from grown children are fragile things, but intentions matter. And that day, I saw their intentions clearly. They were trying, they were learning, they were waking up to their own mistakes. The quiet forgiveness in my heart. As I watched them talk among themselves, something in my heart opened, not the old door. The one filled with expectations and hopes, that had broken me so many times. No, a new door, a gentle door, a peaceful door. A door called forgiveness, not forgiveness because they apologized, not forgiveness because they returned, not forgiveness because they understood, forgiveness because I had finally learned to breathe again, to live again, to love again, without asking for anything in return. That is when I knew. The final part of my journey, the full, complete forgiveness was coming, and soon, it would arrive in the most unexpected way. There is a moment in every long, painful journey when the heart finally takes a deep breath and says, "It's time. Time to let go, time to forgive, time to live again." My moment came unexpectedly, not during a big family gathering, not during an apology, not during tears. It came quietly, in the same house that had once held so much joy and so much loneliness. It happened on a morning just like any other, the day that peace finally arrived. The sun was rising. Soft gold light filled the room. I was sitting by the window with a cup of warm tea, and I realized something simple, something gentle, something freeing. My heart is no longer heavy. Not with sorrow, not with expectations, not with regret. It felt like someone had lifted a large stone off my chest. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God, for giving me the strength to feel again." I didn't know what had changed. Maybe it was time, maybe it was maturity, maybe it was the tears I had shed, maybe it was the quiet days when I learned to stand with myself, or maybe healing comes the moment you stop asking, "Why did they hurt me?" and start asking, "How can I love them without losing myself?" Whatever it was, I felt a calm I had not felt in years. The wounds were still there, but they no longer bled. Their apology came softly. Later that same day, I heard a knock on my door, a gentle knock, not hurried, not impatient. I opened the door to see all three of my children standing there. Together, Hania held a small box of sweets. Samir had his hands in his pockets, looking nervous. Adil looked tired, emotional, quiet. "Mama," Hania whispered, "we want to talk." I stepped aside. "Come in, betas." They all walked in and sat down, not on separate chairs like before, but close to each other, like siblings again. There was silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when hearts are full and words feel small. Finally Adil spoke. "Mama, we've been thinking, we didn't treat you the way we should have. We forgot you, we acted selfish." Samir nodded. "I'm ashamed, Mama, I really am. You were always there for us, and we didn't even check if you were okay." Hania wiped her eyes. "Mama, you didn't deserve the way we made you feel." I listened quietly. They weren't perfect words, not practiced, not dramatic, just honest, and sometimes the softest apology is the one that heals the most. I spoke slowly, gently. "My children, pain happens, distance happens, life happens." They all looked at me, waiting. But love does not disappear unless we let it. Tears filled their eyes. I continued softly, "I forgive you, not because you apologized, but because carrying pain was too heavy for my heart. I want peace in whatever years I have left, and I want peace for you too." They all lowered their heads, tears slipping quietly down their cheeks. It was the first time in many years that they cried, not from anger, not from conflict, but from understanding, the small moment that changed everything. After our talk, they didn't rush to leave. They stayed. We ate together. Nothing fancy, just simple food, but for the first time in so long, it tasted warm, it tasted like family. They talked among themselves, argued a little, laughed softly, and for a moment, I felt like the past had returned, not fully, not perfectly, but enough. Before they left, Samir suddenly asked, "Mama, can we take a picture, the four of us?" I was surprised, but I nodded. We stood near the window, the soft evening light falling around us. Adil set the phone on the table and clicked the timer. We stood together, me in the middle, my children beside me. When the camera beeped, they all leaned a little closer to me, not for the picture, for the moment. After the flash, I looked at the photo, not perfect, not glamorous, not planned, but real, a real smile, real closeness, real healing. And in that moment, my heart felt full again. Not because the past disappeared, not because everything became perfect, but because love had found its way back. Slowly, gently, honestly. What forgiveness really means. That night, after they left, I sat alone again, but the house didn't feel empty, it felt peaceful. I touched the picture on my phone and whispered to myself, forgiveness is not for them. It is for me. Forgiveness didn't erase the years of pain. It didn't erase the loneliness. It didn't erase the moments I cried quietly in the dark, but it healed something deeper. The part of me that still believed I was forgotten. I understood something important. Our children will not always love us the way we love them. They will not always remember us. They will not always understand our hearts. But a mother's love, even when cracked, even when bruised, does not stop. It simply learns to breathe differently, to give without losing itself, to care without breaking, to stand strong even when alone, to forgive even without being asked, and in return, one day, when their hearts learn truth, they come back, not as children, but as grown people, who finally see the woman who carried them, fed them, prayed for them, loved them, even when they didn't notice. My final reflection. If I could go back in time, would I change anything? Would I stop loving them so much? Would I protect myself more? Would I demand more attention? The answer is simple, no, because everything I did out of love, and love, true love, is never wasted. My children may have forgotten me for a while, but they found their way back, not through guilt, not through pressure, not through force, but through the quiet strength of a mother who chose forgiveness over bitterness. That is the lesson I carry now. Even when life breaks our hearts, we still have the power to heal them, not by holding on, but by letting go. I ended that night with a prayer, for my children, for their happiness, for their peace, and for the strength to keep loving with a gentle, forgiving heart. and as I lay down to sleep, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time, a warm, soft peace spreading through my chest, because finally, after so many years of waiting, crying, hurting, and hoping, my heart had come home,